What's up, YouTube? Ahoy, as I like to say. This is my first YouTube video, so everybody, please be nice to me. I'm sorry if it's scuffed, but the only way to start doing stuff is to just heckin' do it. So here we are, we're heckin' doing it. Today, I have a deck tech for you for Lianorn. Not a deck profile, a deck tech. Deck profiles are... You've probably seen them before, where somebody just kind of goes and they lay out their cards. They're like, I'm playing for this, for this, for this, for this, and that's my deck. But by deck techs are a little more in depth. They're a little more intimate per se. I'm not just going to tell you what cards I'm playing. I'm going to tell you why we're playing it, why we chose to play those cards instead of other cards, replacements, upgrades, budget concessions, blah blah blah. I'll go through some like general playlines for the deck, and I'll do at the end a cute little redraw exercise to help help you better understand how I like to pilot the deck. So, where should we start when we're doing our deck tech? I guess a good place to start could be the ride line, but with this deck you can play different types of ride lines. So I mean, we know we're gonna have Lianorn herself, but we're not built around. We're built around using these two cards. You can pause it if you need to read it. Read them. Oh boy, this is tough. I'm like trying to move it on. That hurts my brain. Okay, you can pause it if you need to read them. They're pretty strong cards. Well, base Lianorn isn't very strong, but you can't play this very, very strong card unless you have Lianorn. So, we are going to do what I like to call top-down deck building, because there's like top-down and bottom-up, where bottom-up would be like you start with, I don't know, you just kind of like for some reason wanted to play like money value pile where you're just playing a bunch of expensive cards and you just kind of like you have like a groundwork and then you kind of try and crown it, where with this we already have our crowned jewel right here, Lianorn Vivace, and we're trying to structure the rest of our deck to make her work. This card is very, very strong and can kind of win games on its own. If you persona ride this card, you basically just win. The first time you ride it on turn 4, you don't activate Persona Ride since you're changing your name between Lianorn Vivace and base Lianorn. But when you get to use the second one, then you get to activate the Persona Ride state, which draws you a card. And you enter the Unison Dress state again, so you actually get to draw 2 cards. On that turn, your numbers just get really, really big. This can easily swing for over 100,000. And when your opponent has been PGing lots, you can just do a particular play we'll get into where if you count their PGs right, you can just make them die on the spot. They think they have enough shield, but they won't. It's pretty slick. So we have to play for Lianorn. When I organize my piles here, I'm going to be organizing them not by grade, but by what turn we want to use these cards on. It'll help us kind of flush out or to figure out what kinds of things we need to keep in mind as we construct this deck, because part of this is the construction process that I'm presenting to you, not just what cards I ended up on, but how I arrived to those cards. And I don't think at any point anybody was playing less than 4 Vivace, which we need it on turn 4, and we would like to have another one on turn 5 or 6 to just be that little win button. It's neat. Next up is Luster Impact Dragon, because if we are going to be trying to go into Vivace, we are going to need to be able to find it consistently. Speaking of finding it consistently, we'll get into this guy. But for the way I'm presenting my curve right now, Luster Impact Dragon is a neat card. It's very, very important to have, but you don't want to have too many of this kind of card. I guess actually just let you read it. If you haven't seen Luster Impact Dragon before, he gets big. You can Soul Blast 1 when he stands by the effect of your Lianorn or Grand via Vanguard, and he gets 5 and you draw. And if you have enough cards, grade 1 or less, he gets boost and +5. So he's at 15k, and then after he uses his effect, he's at 20k. I don't want to see this card too much. So similar to, there's a legendary creature rule in Magic the Gathering, where legendary creatures, you can't have 2 of them on the board at the same time. So a lot of legendary creatures, they only play 3 of it because they don't want to draw multiple copies of it, but they still want to see it. So we still want to see our Lesser Impact Dragon, but we don't want to see multiples of it because base Lianorn can only stand once in the back row. If you have 2 of this in the back row, it won't have boost, and Lianorn can only be boosted by cards with boost. So if we only have, if you have 2 of these in the back row, it doesn't work, and we can only do it with back rows at first. Later, we can have more Luster Impact Dragons, but later we'll have, there are ways in our nation to revive cards, so we don't need to be too hung up on it. Next up, we have our, I cannot read this card's name. If you haven't read this card, it's pretty similar to a card called Friendly Broccoli. It's like a hybrid between Friendly Broccoli and our Luster Impact Dragon friend. Eventually, it'll let you read it. Its first effect, when it's placed, you get to counterblast 1. Maybe it's because I'm not holding it steady enough. If you counterblast 1, if you have Lianorn as your Vanguard or in your Ride deck, you can check the top 7 cards of your deck for Vivace and add it to your hand. If you don't add a Vivace, you draw. And similar to the Luster Impact Dragon, it can gain boost. My gosh, why can't you read it? Maybe now? Come on. Come on. Oh, come on. It gets boost, 5k power, and 5k shield if you have, I think if it's, if your back, it's the exact same condition as Luster Impact. So similar to, you don't have too many of it on your board, but this guy is really good in your front row. Ethereal Cadence La Grace. That's his name. This card is pretty strong, and if our goal is to use Vivace, it'd be really nice to have a way to find the Vivace. Next we have this Friendly Broccoli card. We'll get to him later. He's kind of filler, so we'll talk about why I only have 2 slots left over to use for Broccoli. Broccoli, like I said, is just kind of like these 2 cards combined. Well, I guess he's like a smaller version of this, actually. I'm sorry. That's not at all what Broccoli is. He lets you counterblast 1 and draw on place, and then he gets to be, and he gets plus 5k power and shield, but he doesn't get boost. So he's just kind of like, he's a little bit worse, but he gets the same job done. So far, other than, well, actually, including Vivace, this card has draw a card written on it when it enters the Unison Dress state. All of our cards so far say draw a card, and we're going to continue that. Most of our cards are going to let us draw cards, because we need to find Vivace, so we need to keep drawing until we find her. This card, Rhythm of Joy, Elendis, is really strong. Well, she's not too strong, but she's not weak either. If we have Lianorn Vanguard, she gets +2, and if that Vanguard is in Unison Dress, she gets +5, so she gets a 10k beater or a 13k attacker. And then at the end of my turn, if our Vanguard was boosted enough times and we did the Lianorn thing, we can retire it and draw a card. And if our damage zone has no face-up cards, we countercharge. This card is very strong because of that countercharge ability. If we are very particular with how we take our damage, we can get a countercharge out of this most turns. We have a lot of effects in our deck that let us counterblast. Lianorn lets us counterblast. Vivace costs a counterblast. This costs a counterblast. Our filler friend, Friendly Broccoli, will cost a counterblast. And we have one last effect in our deck that can cost a counterblast. If we can efficiently use all of our counterblasts, we can use this card to countercharge and then get a second draw per counterblast we get. And we can reuse this card, calling it back from our drop zone, to countercharge again, draw again. It's pretty neat. Why play 4 of it, though? Because 4 of this is pretty self-explanatory, since we need to find Vivace, so why not max that on our searcher? 2 of this makes sense because it's our filler card. I only had 2 slots left over. But 4 of this, it could be... Like, some people play 3 of it. I think a lot of lists I had looked at before I had rolled up to the event were playing 3 of this card. But I want to see multiple copies of this card. Because if I call it early, I don't want to be, like, sweating if they kill it. I don't necessarily want to use a resurrection effect on it. And I would like to countercharge multiple times. So, similar to how I shaved this because I don't want to see multiples of it, I'm going to keep the playset of this card because I'm more than comfortable seeing multiple copies of this. You don't necessarily want to see it turn 1, but I have it in this turn pile because if we're going second, it can be nice to have turn 1. So most of these cards in this turn 1 pile are turn 1 going second, and it kind of just makes our going second pile just all of these. If you know anything about Lianorn, you know how great this card is. This is one of the only cards in our deck that doesn't produce... Well, I mean, it actually does produce advantage, technically. Rosarium Fairy. It comes with the front. When he comes into play, you sack a plant and make a plant. And then its second effect, if it would focus... if you have a Lianorn or Ground via Vanguard, when it attacks, it gets the power of the unit in your back row with the most power. So if it's boosted by that, it like gets double boosted. Oh gosh, why won't it focus? Come on. Come on. No. This is embarrassing. There we go. So you can pause it if you need to read it. But it comes with a free little plant token friend. Well, not free. You have to sacrifice one of your rear guards. But that's not really an issue with this deck. We will have enough rear guards because now's a good time to get into our ride line. Because I really like not having to worry about Rosarium Fairy. We're playing the Rora wide line, who makes a free plant behind our Vanguard circle. Then Grade 2 Rora has an effect to sacrifice a plant and make 2 plants. So that Rosarium Fairy always has something we can sacrifice for it. And we don't have to sweat too much about getting that worked out. It just kind of happens. We're playing 4 of it because, again, we want to see multiple copies of this card. If we're going second, we want to be able to attack with it early on in the game. It has a huge target on its back, so your opponents will constantly be attacking into the Rosarium Fairy. Well, not constantly, but it is not uncommon to have them attack your Rosarium Fairy. It happened a lot to me in the event. I was actually able to use that to my advantage at several points by concealing the information on my Rosarium Fairies and my Rosarium Fairy revival effects. I was able to make opponents attack one when I actually had more copies of it than I needed to. It's one of your strongest cards, and you should be playing 4 of it. It has cute tech with giving triggers to your back row units, because then you can kind of double dip on the trigger effect, where like if you give it to a back row unit, like your strongest back row unit is behind Rosarium Fairy, then it gives it +10, and then Rosarium Fairy gets the +10 again, so it gets doubled to +20. If it's on the other lane, that other lane gets boosted by +10, but then Rosarium Fairy could see that biggest unit back there and still get the +10 from it, so you still get +20 from the trigger. So in order to get maximum value, it's important to try and get to find optimal times to add trigger powers to your back row. Which, speaking of triggers, we'll get to it. We're not playing fronts, I'll tell you that. Next up, this is the only other card that doesn't, besides Rosarium, that doesn't have draw a card on its text box. And it's for good. It does, because it doesn't draw us a card, it revives a card. You might or may not have heard of Alvina. Hopefully she'll come into focus so you can read her. But the Silver Rare is really tough to read. While we're waiting for it to come into focus, I actually pulled 3 of these from prize packs at locals. So I was able to scoop up just one off the market before the price hikes. I get this nice looking playset there. So you can pause it if you need to read it. When it's placed from hand, other than during your battle phase, which we can't do, you Energy Blast 3, and you get to revive a card from your drop zone, a grade 1 or less. Well, you revive Rosarian Fairy. You're like basically always reviving Rosarian Fairy or Alendis. In other decks you'll do other things, like revive PGs and stuff to intercept within Grand Blue. But with this deck, it's basically just 8, we're playing 8 copies of Rosarian Fairy. It's really neat. Unless you add an order card back from your drop zone to your hand, but we're not playing any orders. That mode on it is a really strong effect that we just can't take advantage of, which is unfortunate. But that's not too unfortunate. Why play 4 and not 3? Because, spoiler, we're going to go ahead one card and talk about Cease Rumble Brave Shooter. This also draws us a card for Energy Blast. You probably know what the Energy Cyclers do. You Energy Blast 3 when you guard with it, or you pitch it to Ride to draw. And then if you Persona Ride, you can pay the same cost when it's placed on rearguard to get something back from your drop zone. But you discard a card, which is lame that you have to discard one, but like, whatever. It never really comes up in this deck because of our Persona Riding or winning, but it can come up. You can, like, you Persona Ride, you draw 2 cards, they're useless, but you draw this, you can, like, call it to rearguard and get back a Rosarian Fairy. This gives us 8 cards that produce, or that use our energy, which is a little more than I normally like to play. Normally I like to play just 7. 7 cards that use energy, because 8 is just, I don't know, it feels like a little too much oftentimes. But remember how I was saying for the Rhythm of Joy, we want to be using enough counterblasts to make sure that we can get our counter charge. The counterblast mode instead of the energy blast mode on this can come up kind of clutch. So there's been times where like I CB1 to draw so that I'll have enough face down for this. But then it also saves enough energy because I was bricked for whatever reason. I can energy blast 7 and draw and just squeak out max value. But like, you know, I could, so I'm doing this as like this one costs CB, not as like well, I'm going to play too many energy cards or not use them. Because Alvina is really strong to draw early. I don't know if you've seen Grand Blue players do it, but we can do something similar where we discard a valuable grade 1, like the Rhythm of Joy or Rosarian Fairy, for our turn 1 ride. And then if we're going second, I guess we can just do it turn 2 if we went first. You can use Alvina here to bring back the card you discarded. So like we can ride grade 1 Rorwa, get a plant token behind our Vanguard, by discarding this Rosarian Fairy, and then we could call Alvina, and Alvina can call back Rosarian Fairy, and Rosarian Fairy can sacrifice 1 plant to make 2 plants. So then we can have like 10, 10, 18, since now we'll have enough units for Alvina to be a 10k. You can have like a 13, 13, 10k lane, which is, and there's different reasons to set up different lanes based off of how badly you're trying to convince your opponent to say no guard early. There's different reasons to play those lines different, but either way you'll want to see it if you're going second to try and catch up, because energy I found to be a nice catch-up mechanic for going second. If you don't have any cards that make use of that energy you get for going second, then going second just kind of feels bad a lot of the time. But if you're able to make efficient use of that energy in the battle phase, then it won't feel so bad. If you go first, you only have 1 battle phase before you attack with Lianorn, because this needs to be your first attack on your grade 3 turn. Like, it doesn't need to, but you would be foolish to do anything else. You can only have 3 attacks max, so it's pretty easy for your opponent to not be too scared going into your first grade 3 turn. But if you set up a full board and you've attacked them 6 times before you've even ridden to grade 3, that can be rather frightening for a lot of players to deal with. You can exert a lot of pressure, And then when you do ride up to Rosarium Fairy, it skills online, because in order to get the power gain, your opponent has to be grade 3. So some people even choose to go second with this deck, which I would not recommend. All the best decks want to go first, so you want to deny them their ability to go first. Like, I'm thinking of Levidrus or Odium or just any of those big decks. I don't want to let them go first. I don't care if my deck feels good going second. It feels really bad for those kinds of decks to go first. But if they win the die roll, then it's not like I'm screwed. I have, by having enough cards to use the energy I get, then I can catch back up. If you've been counting, that's 29 cards. Triggers and PGs make 20, so we have to play 30. And I have not put a Regals piece in. I've been really liking Twin Cast. This is like dual protection Twin Cast or something. Protection Twin Cast. When you play it, your Vanguard gets plus 10, or I guess one of your units being attacked, and then you can bind it to have the unit being attacked get plus 5 for each of your Vanguard's grades. So it's 25k shield over 2 attacks. So like this one card can block 2 swings, which is a kind of plus in and of itself. So every card in our deck, every card except for our triggers and PGs, gets us advantage of some sort. Like even Rosarium Fairy makes us a plant token, which is a kind of plus. This gets us a free card from our drop zone, that's a plus. This doesn't plus us because it dies and draws, but the counter charge becomes a plus, so it gives us a resource, which is a kind of plus. These plus us, these plus us, this pluses, and then even riding that. Like, you lose one when you ride it, but the Unison Dress makes it refund itself, and then when you actually Persona ride into it, you do go plus. So all of our cards just generate advantage, and it makes the whole deck flow together really well. I chose Twincast instead of a card like Ladder, because I feel like we have a decent enough, like Shiranui isn't very popular anymore, and we have a decent enough matchup into it anyway, where I don't feel like we need it. What we want to do is live until like turn 5 or 6, because if we Persona our Vivace, we just win. And one of the best ways to make sure you live that long is to block well. And I feel like Twincast is one of the best orders for blocking well. The other Blitz Order Rearguards, Regal's pieces, I mean, Union the Sky and Evergreen Transfer, those are nice cards, they're fine, but I don't want the Soul Blast cost of Transfer, the fact that it only that it's 25k on 1 attack instead of 2. I mean, this one has to be 2, so it's not like it's strictly better, but I'm constantly running out of soul, so I don't want to pay the Soul Blast cost. And then I already have enough cards that use energy, so I don't really want to use Union the Sky either. But you could do something where you, like, I don't know, you shave one of those for a Union or one of their Seas Remote Brave Shooters for a Union the Sky. And then, like, this becomes, like, another Broccoli or something. And if you... That, then, after we put in our 1 Regals, because I feel like having 1 Twincast is better than having a 3rd Broccoli. It literally just, like, I don't know, it has more shield. Because, like, yeah, you get 15 and then into 10 if you attack and then block, so it's 25k numbers total on a body, which is neat. But Twincast is kind of like, it just felt really nice. It saved my life once or twice. It's a really strong card, and I've been enjoying playing it. It feels good. It doesn't really go anywhere on our turn curve, per se, but it's a good card, and I really enjoyed the way it felt in the deck. If you'd like to play a different Regals piece, you can. Of course, every Regals piece is good. None of them are bad. But I feel like Twincast is one of the best when you just don't have anything better to do in particular. It's not like we don't have any... Well, we have grade 3s to call off a Forbital, but we don't want to call this a Forbital Surrogate. We will be riding, so we're not, like... We don't want the Cup. The Cup is lame. I don't need to go through all the Regals pieces, but it would just to suffice to say that this feels pretty good. Because we have all of these, because we're maxed, we don't want to play the Force one of this. This is how much we max out want to play. I guess if you, like, put this in this slot we're kind of maxed out on everything that we want to play. So then just for those last little slots, broccoli is really good, and playing to smooth out our curve, it's nice to have this little broccoli here. Because if we look at the way the turn curve of our deck is, we have so many cards that we want to use early. Like if we go second, we have 16 cards that we want to do. If we go first, we're not doing anything turn 1. And then we're going to have 16 plus 6 for 22 cards. 22 cards that we're going to be able to use to pressure our opponent. That's more than a third of our deck. So we should be able to efficiently fill a board, especially because Rosarium, between our plant tokens and our Rosarium Fairy plant token, we only need to commit 2 cards to the board anyway. So it's pretty easy to create a nice aggressive board early in the game to try and convert early pressure into early wins, to make going second work for us, basically. So then the last little things we have to go over, PGs. I think I was playing Elementaria for the event. I can't recall. I was probably playing it, but I've since probably removed it because I only have so many Elementaria Sanctitudes. I'm playing the Stoichea Overtrigger because it's crazy. You draw, like, it's just crazy. Because but purple and blue are so good. Like, they're fine. They're great cards, but blue's nice because it's a crit. Purple's nice because it's a heal. And, like, yeah, they do other things, and that's great. But this is a crit and a heal. So, I just like maxing out on heals and crits. So this lets us do that. So in some decks, there are reasons to play 4th draw triggers. But in general, unless you have a really good reason to play the extra draws, you shouldn't. I don't know how many people were around for it back in the day, but in the before times, we had done the math, and it's just almost mathematically better, like, to play as many crits as possible. Like, this was before draws had 10k shield, but when they had 5k shield, some guy on Pojo forums did the math. They laid it all out for us, and it was just mathematically stronger, more value, more shield, more everything to just play a crit. It was just better. And then for heals, we've maxed out our crits, we've maxed out our heals. We have 9 crits and 5 heals. Nice. It feels really clean. I have no complaints about this trigger lineup, and I wouldn't change it. It's really good. You might try and, like, change the artworks or whatever, but I don't know. Lianorn is a trial deck, so I like having the trial deck triggers. It makes it feel aesthetically pleasing. Effect heals aren't really good this format. Speaking of the format, I played this deck at BCS Vancouver in January. Hold on, I need some tea. My throat just hurts. I'm not used to talking this much. Okay. I played this at BCS Vancouver, and me and my friends were calling that metagame the Big Three. You have Odium, the extra turn deck. You have Levidros, the dragon who makes the markers, and Rezael, the main characters unit, and everybody knows what Rezael does. And then guest starring Elderglemma. That's what gate kept me. I went 5-2, and my 2 losses were to Odium that won the die roll. That deck is very, very tough to beat when it wins the die roll. My friend, my partner, my girlfriend, who got 4th place at that same event, was playing Odium. And she says that I don't believe she lost a single game where she won the die roll. It was just really, really powerful. So there's not, like, much shame in that one. It just happened. They win the die roll, they had the full setup, and I didn't have enough shield. It just happens. And then the other loss I had was to Elderglemma. I had to not draw a perfect guard after drawing a third of my deck. And they had to also, in this particular order, crit overtrigger me, and guess exactly what happened. I didn't find a PG, and they crit OT'd me. It's unfortunate. So it doesn't feel like any of the losses I took had anything to do with the deck I chose or with the way it was constructed. The deck worked absolutely beautifully. I beat Levidros's. I beat every. I think I played against Levidros 3 times and I beat it every time. It was really clean. I decked out one of them. That was really funny because that guy was focusing a lot on defense, and I had just as much as he did because he's like, yeah, that deck punches hard, but if you're playing your blocks efficiently and you're blocking a lot early, since you don't need the CB for much until late, it's nice to have it for these turn 2 cards, but you don't need it. Like, if you have a Vivace already, then you can you could block with these instead of using them to find Vivace. I didn't play against Rezael, so actually I don't know. I didn't get too much chance to play against it at locals either, because I never play this deck at locals. I used to, but then all the our more casual friends would be very annoyed. They would just be up there like, because this is like, these 8 cards are like $300, so they're just like, it's so filthy. I can't believe you're just playing a money pile. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Back to Mythiarchs. Back to Petrolka Gaming. Oh boy. So this is where we ended up in terms of the list. All of this felt really neat. If budget isn't a concern for you, this is basically just, this is super, this is just peak. This, like, a lot of people put in an extra, they like shave, maybe they'll do something like this, but I don't need 7 of this kind of card. The only one card does what the Rhythm of Joy does. And if my game plan is built around the way I can double dip on my counterblast, thanks to this very narrow countercharge, I'm playing around it so much that I want to be rewarded by drawing into it. It's also a draw that doesn't cost anything, because in order to go plus, yes, this isn't like a draw, but you can turn it into one, because then you can use our energy blend over here to counterblast and cash in on it pretty quickly, because you lose this, but you need to make room on your board oftentimes anyway, because you'll kind of be conserving these Rosarium fairies a little bit. So you want to be able to fill these slots when you're not, because if you put too many of these on the board, you're overextending, and you can get really punished for if you have 2 Rosarium fairies on board and 1 Alvina in hand, and I run my board into your Rosarium fairies, then on your kill turn, you won't have enough Rosarium fairies to necessarily get that kill you need. I just in case you haven't read base Lianorn, I never held it up to the camera. Well, no, I totally did. But look at this card. This is one of the most clean looking Vanguard cards. So it felt really nice to be able to play a deck that I enjoy, and do really well with it. So if you like Lianorn or you like this aesthetic, this is what I would play, unless of course these are out of your price range. If you can't afford those, I have some stuff set aside over here. You can play some stuff that does similar things. Because nothing does exactly the same thing as Sea Rumble Brave Shooter. He basically lets us play a 46 card deck. He's like Upstart Goblin. He just kind of replaces himself. He lets us, he's free. He lets you cycle a little more. So cutting him isn't the end of the world. It lets us have room to play additional cards. So if you don't have these, there's other good things to do. Diantha is probably pretty cheap now. Diantha used to be really expensive, but not anymore. When she's placed on rearguard from hand, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, +1, call it grade 3 or less card from your drop zone, and then she becomes a 13k. So I would play 3 of it, and there's other Lianorn promo. The Concert of Many Emotions, Priscilla, I think her name is. I can't quite. Her second effect almost never comes up at the beginning of your main phase if you're in User's Interest. She floats to your soul. I don't think I've ever used that in all the time I played this card. But if you have Vivace in your hand, or you're in the Unit Interest state, you can Soul Blast 1 to resurrect something. So you have these, but this one, if you were paying close attention, doesn't say when placed from hand. So like, if you got board wiped by Varga or something and you have nothing, if you are holding on to Diantha, you can call Diantha, call the Concert of Many Emotions, and then you can call Rosarium Fairy to get 3 cards on your board, all for the price of 1. Because Vivace, in order to get the restand effect, needs to be boosted by 3 rear guards. So this card lets you turn, because you have a tough time against retire matchups. That one of the guys that beat me, the Odium player that beat me, was like mansplaining to me about why he didn't play this deck and why I had such a bad Varga matchup and he was so scared of Varga. I literally didn't see a Varga player. I heard there were some Varga players, but nobody sitting next to me, nobody was playing that deck around me anyway. So he was like really scared of it. And if you are really scared of it, this little combo lets you be really resilient to it. If you're playing against any board wipe deck, you just kind of legendary creature rule, only 3 of it. Because you only need to see 1, you need to see it late. You draw in, and you need to see 1 of this at some point during the game. You block with this or something, and then you call this, call that, call Rosarium, bam, board in a box, we call it. That leaves us with 2 slots left over. You could just play another Broccoli. That's neat. And then Elmodar is fine. He's okay. I don't know. I was playing him before because we're trying to live a long time, right? So we can block with it. You definitely said this Alvina and these other cards we're playing do similar things, so it makes sense to cut them. But I wouldn't play like if you had to choose one or the other, and you had to choose between if you only have like Sea Strumble Brave Shooters in your deck, and you have no Alvinas, I would probably do like a 2-2 split between our friends that do the reviving, because this effect is really strong, and you'll be able to draw into it more if you have these, our Sea Strike Brave Shooters. But then if we have Alvinas, and we don't have Sea Strike Brave Shooter, then I'd probably do like 3 and then a Broccoli, because like I was saying how we want to use the counterblast sometimes, Broccoli will let us efficiently use our counterblasts. And like I said, one of them, I'm only planning to use like 1, or like very rarely do I plan on using the second counterblast. So Broccoli fits that slot really neat. So if you have budget concerns, which are very, very valid, those cards are very expensive, that's what I would do. But if you are concerned about expensive cards, there's usually times if you, in the market where things are like dip. Like this was $12 not too long ago, and now it's like 30. I think there's something similar to this, and now she's like 45. This used to be expensive, but now it's $10. So this is other than these, this is the most expensive card. And it's getting reprinted in a deck soon. So if you have budget concerns, I'll probably wait until the Lianorn. There's like a master deck set coming out in a little bit. That looks pretty hype. I would probably look into picking that up if you have budget concerns. That does it for what cards we're playing and all that. However, I'm not done talking to you just yet. I can ramble on and on, but I have something that I like to do in deck techs, because it's neat to just talk about the cards and all that, sure, but it's another thing to give you demonstrations on how it works, because I could show you because I want to do the redraw exercise. Here it is. Found it. Because it has the circles on it, so I really like to use this one. My favorite. This is my favorite mat I have by far. I have all these. You can see the prize mats that I want. I use them as mouse pads because I don't know. It's just this mat is so clean. So we have our ride deck. Wait, I put my ride deck here. Old habits die hard. I don't necessarily want to like waste your time by walking through this going first and going second. So if you're going second, you kind of do the same stuff but more aggressively. But if you won the die roll, and if you're like practicing this deck, that's how I would start it. Is by, because if I won, I would go first. So I would start like this. So we ride. We're gonna not have one hand in particular because we're gonna have access to all of the cards in our deck here, so that I can show you what your game plan is in general, and not how to salvage however I particularly brick. So you pitch something to ride. Rorwa. You get a plant token. It goes behind your Vanguard, and you have nothing else to do turn 1. You'll usually get hit and you want to take, that's the over trigger. You want to take 1 damage at least, since on your grade 2 turn, you want to be able to like use a broccoli that you draw or something else, unless everything's contextual, of course. Never always, never. If you're playing against like Levidros or Odium and they won the die roll and they just swung at you for 8, it could be wise to block and stay low. But in general, if like you want a counterblast to start making some plays. On your next turn, when you ride to grade 2 or what, you get to sacrifice 1 plant token to make 2 plant tokens. I usually like to keep 1 as a Vanguard booster. Since I call it booster strats, having a Vanguard booster is really important because it makes it much more difficult for your opponent to, early on in the game, just slam down 1 15k trigger to block an attack by forcing them, because if they slam down the 15k on this attack, I'll attack for 15, they'll go to 23, I check a trigger and go to 25 and break. So it kind of like, it's like a mind game. You're kind of Jedi tricking them into saying no guard, even if it like might be correct in one particular situation or another to like risk it. You can kind of make them say no guard by just putting a booster behind your Vanguard. In this game though, we likely would like to use a Rosarium Fairy, which we want to keep in the back to keep out of harm's way. We sacrifice 1 plant, we make 2 plants. And then lastly, we would use something like our top 7 searcher to find a Vivace. I mean, we just take Vivace and we'll get it to add it to our hand. That's neat. As we have enough units in our back row, this gets +5, making this a 20k column. So we get to do something kind of nasty. There are different reasons to swing in different orders, but I have my old habits die hard of swinging with this rear first for 13. If they check a defensive, then this still threatens them, and they'll still, because if they only toss on a 5k, they still go to 23, which puts them in the same situation I talked about before, why we have this booster here. They're still in that awkward scenario, so they still have to toss down a 15k to block this attack safely, even after checking a trigger. And if they do that, then they don't have a 15k to block this 20k swing, and if I check a trigger, then this goes to 30, and they need a trigger to block it, and it just gets really awkward for them. So I always like attacking in this kind of flow from, yeah, I guess it's this way. I'm not used to having it upside down like this. I'm getting used to it. My first video, everybody. I hope you're enjoying it so far, because I'm having some fun. On their turn, it's important to try and make space, because we have multiple units with on-place effects. It's important to try and get intercept value while you can. I guess we would have. So but it gets a little tricky. Like if they like ride swing and they only have 1 column, it's kind of tough. Like, do you want to have your full board here still and the extra CB? But Lianorn's CB, all of your CB is only useful if your board isn't full. So you're better off just like intercepting and then tossing down a 5k, or if they booster strats you, then instead of blocking with a 5k from hand, it's okay that it's a little bit of an overguard to intercept with this. It's not the end of the world to like lose out on 5k shield, because the amount of like, because you get a free +1 every time you no guard. It's like a pretty, it's like kind of like plussing, but you can only do it so many times. You intercept, he goes bye-bye. Because on your grade 3 turn, you don't need much CB to get much done. Especially if you went first, your grade 3 turn is like one of your weakest points in the game. You don't do much right here. You could like, you basically like move forward with this plant token and call a Luster Impact Dragon. Like if you have a Rhythm of Joy in your hand, I keep missing her, then it can be kind of, it feels a little bad to call over rear guards. But if instead of thinking about it as like minusing yourself, because this card we didn't pay any, this card we just got for free, it's just like our empty circles become plant tokens almost. So instead of thinking of it as like going -1, think of it as promoting your plant token. That spot never had any real card in it, so you're not really losing anything. So it's okay to promote your Rosarium, or to promote your little guys a little bit. You don't necessarily need to do this, but just for demonstrative purposes, this makes this slightly cleaner looking. You have this nice 20k lane over here, since this will be, well, and then this will turn to a 25k, or a 20k and a 25k lane. And this is only, it was only 13 before, now it's 18, which is still lame. But if you check a trigger, because you get triple drive, and it might sound a little presumptuous to say that you'll get a trigger, but triggers are 1 in 3. We do 3 drive checks, and the rule, or is it the law of expected value in statistics, tells us we'll probably get a trigger. I mean, it's not like we should count on it all the time, but it's pretty safe to plan around checking one, because you probably will get one. And if you've played against this deck enough times, I feel like you know what I'm talking about. And they just check a lot of triggers so early. With this card, like, it's pretty gross. So you attack with this first. You attack while not boosted, and you Soul Blast 1 to make it gain triple drive, and you discard a card, which is, it can always be tough to decide what to pitch, but it's worth it. It refunds itself. It's 15, 28, 28 plus 13 for 31. No. You know what? I'm trolling. 28, 13, 41. Yeah, it's a 41k swing, which is pretty chonkin'. Oftentimes they'll no guard NG or PG, no guard or perfect guard. You get to do your drive checks, and then afterwards you get to stand these up. That'll trigger your Luster Impact Dragon. You Soul Blast another card, and you draw another card. This right here, this play where you Soul Blast 1 and then Soul Blast another one. This is another reason we're playing the Aurora wide line. Her base ride line that she comes with from that trial deck, the grade 1 removes itself from the soul, and the grade 2 costs a Soul Blast. So the only card in your, you only have one card left in your soul, and you couldn't make this play. Some people will just play, it's like they have they'll play the red line grade 2 instead, which would have cost them a Soul Blast 1 here, and you'd have no soul, which is fine. It just makes, like, there are times later on in the game where it would be really nice to trigger Luster Impact Dragon to find whatever pieces you're looking for in those games that are going late, but you haven't Persona Road. It's just usually better to have this one soul than to try and use it on something else. The plant tokens are sufficient value. It's like, yeah, we just called over one, so maybe you didn't need that extra plant token, but you saw it was valuable last turn, and it's not about, like, the turn you do something on is very important, not just what you do, but when you do it is important. And I don't think that the grade 2 from the ride line gets to get its perfect timing out really well. Then you got a trigger, right? Probably. So it's 28 and then 25. So it's like the same numbers. And then you would float your rhythm. You get to draw another card and countercharge. So on that turn, we got to draw and we got to filter one and draw two without having to commit anything. Anything at all. I guess we committed that. We didn't draw. You know, you now definitely, you should have at least one Vivace in your hand. So on the next turn, as you like take 2 more damage, not necessarily actually draw triggers, but just some damage, you are set up to have a pretty good time on your next turn. Because when you unison dress, don't forget to draw your card. It's very important, and I believe it's a mandatory draw, so you could get a penalty for not drawing a card. This is when you finally get to use your Rosarium Fairies. And then you would call, like, this is show, like, I don't know, like, and you could Alvina to call back a Rhythm of Joy. And there's some debate on, like, if you want these two to be in the same column or not. You do, like, if you had a Rosarium Fairy, it might be nice to call one here. But we'll just yeah, this is probably fine. Because this lane, this is 15 right now before anything interesting happens. So it's 18 plus 15 for the 33k lane. This is the 13 plus 15, so this is 28. So your lanes currently are nice and diversified. So when you swing for 28, it's only decks with fronts can 1 card block those. Decks with draws will be kind of annoyed for that 28k attack. When you attack for 33, even decks with fronts are sweating. And you attack with Vivace, you stand everything, you boost with everything. Luster Impact Dragon triggers mid-battle, so don't forget to resolve that. You Soul Blast 1 to draw another card, and he goes up to being 20,000 mid-battle. So we have 20, 30, 35, 43, plus 13 for 56. So this is 69,000. That's another reason this is a nice board. I mean, it's pretty good. I think it's funny. You get to swing for 69,000. Absolutely beautiful. And then at the end of the battle, kind of last one. And you get to choose 3 of your units and stand them. You almost always want to stand Vivace to get the extra drive check. You want to stand Rosarium Fairy because they're your biggest unit. And it's really easy to tunnel into restanding an Alvina and get the 3 attacks. But if your opponent had checked a defensive trigger, this is only an 18k attack, so oftentimes it's not worth it. Sometimes it's worth it to get the extra attack, because then now you have, instead of an 18k poke, you have a 28k with 1 drive check, so it's still difficult for them to guard this attack. And this is still getting power from Luster Impact Dragon. So it's still going to be pretty big, because it's 13 plus 20, so this is 33 by itself. So now you have 33 and 28, which are still pretty threatening numbers, because they probably PG'd the first one, since it was so big. And you attack again, and then again. Of course, like, maybe if they didn't get a defensive, it could be nice to do this. But then that's kind of like where you, I don't know, like, you swing, they do get one, and then this is just super tiny, and then you don't have a trigger for this one, and it's an easy 1-card block for them. It just gets a little unfortunate. At the end of your turn, you would sack that. Then probably kill this. Probably go to 5. And if you get to Persona Ride, you basically just get to win. It'd be important to make sure that you are able to get your second, because, like, you don't need the second Rosarium Fairy, but on your kill turn, it's very important to be able to put Rosarium Fairy in this column with the Luster Impact Dragon. So like, and there's no shame in just like calling Alvina, Energy Blasting 3, and getting Rosarium Fairy. There's no shame in just doing that. Because this turn gets much better if you do that. As this is 15 plus the 18 for 33. This is 43. And this becomes like a 30k booster on the 18. Makes this 48, which is crazy. Vivace attacks, and it factors in the boosts from your persona right into this attack. So this is very large. Very, very large. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 76, 81, plus 13 makes this a 94k attack. It would have been over 100k if we had something else. We had it's pretty easy to make this over 100k is what I'm saying. So you swing for absolutely chonking. They PG it, and then they think they have enough shield because this is 20k. So both of the Rosariums are currently 18 plus 20 for 38s. So I'm like, oh man, I can block that. 2-card block for that. 2-card block for this. But if you stand your columns like this instead, this is now a 25k. If you check a trigger, it's a 35k. Remember, between your 3 drive checks, you get 2 and then 1. This can be 35k. So 35 doubles to being a 70k boost for an 18k, making this an 88k swing. And then they thought that 60,000 shield they had would be enough, and they slam down 60k and they go to 73, and it's not enough shield. They do not have enough shield to block this attack because you get to double dip on those numbers. And like 28, because they were still planning on doing something about the 28. But if they're out of, of course, if they have PGs, don't do that. Like if you can smell that they have a bunch of PGs in their hand, sound like this. But if they've been holding on to a bunch of triggers, they're really low on PG, and you think they're out, then this can hit that magical break point and just break through. Because even if it was only a 50k boost instead of a 70k boost, it's still 68. Yeah, I guess then there would be enough. But then it's so that if you check a trigger, that doubling of the power makes it so that you can break over the top. I mean, I guess if you checked a trigger, that would be 35. I don't know, 30. These would each be 48s if you check a trigger. So in order to block both, they would need 50. No, they would need 80,000 shield total, which is what they would need to block. Well, which would not be enough to block this. Because if you stand that 70, 80 from effect, 88, I guess it works out basically the same. But you know what I'm trying to say. It can make it... There are valid reasons to stand this column instead of just tunneling on standing your whole front row. Because standing your front row is great. It's good to get more attacks, yes. But there are times when bigger attacks just hit those breakpoints that the other ones don't. And with that, they should, on your Persona right turn, they should be dead. And you should be able to clench it up from there. So, that's the demo game, which leaves us with one last thing to do. Now that we know how to play the deck, there is an important part of every game that doesn't get talked about very much. A lot of games can be won or lost at the redraw stage. You can redraw you can redraw really well in some situations and fix hands that would have been unplayable. You can kind of just doom yourself sometimes if you are a little too aggressive with your mulligans. If you don't properly keep in mind your triggers and shield, it's pretty easy to be caught with your pants down and to have no shield in your hand and to just kind of get rolled over sometimes. So it's important to take some time to get good at doing your redraws, because a good redraw or a bad redraw can make or break a game. It really can. This cute little exercise I'm going to do helps you see not just one hand every time you shuffle your deck, but it lets you take an entire peek at the entirety of your deck, so that you can see how good it feels to draw every single card in your deck, instead of sitting there, shuffle, shuffle, draw 5, shuffle, shuffle, draw 5, shuffle, shuffle, draw 5, shuffle, shuffle, draw 5, shuffle, shuffle, draw 5. You don't get as much information as you would like if you're just checking that. You don't get perfect information. You get an incomplete. You get like there's a metaphor of forest and trees, where you keep looking at the trees to try and draw the forest, but it's a lot easier if you could zoom out and look at more trees instead of just trying to do it one at a time. Though exact way I worded that metaphor in the past is lost on me. Alright, and after properly mixing 3 separate shuffling methods, piling, Hinduing, and riffling, we are all set up. We're going to do this exercise twice, once for going first and once for going second, because that affects your redraw. I like to make piles of the cards that I put back in my deck to kind of see what cards I do and don't like to keep. Some people like to keep PGs, other players don't. I don't like to keep cards that aren't impactful early. I want to use my mulligan to try and get me set up for good early games, and then the way my deck will flow can get me into better late games. So like perfect cards aren't going to be good until like turn 3. I have many of them. Maybe if I had changed my habits and start keeping PGs, I would have made top cut because I would have died to that Elegunda player. But you can't let hindsight change your philosophy too much, because you don't have that information when you make this decision. The decision you make at your redraw needs to be information agnostic, as a fancy way of saying it. I keep Rosarium because it's going to let me make a nice board to beat down my opponent with, and I'll keep the Energy Cycler because they're crazy. This hand is neat, but it doesn't have as much shield as I would like. But with Broccoli and the Energy Cycler, I can probably draw the shield I'm looking for. So that goes in our good hand pile. This hand, I'll probably put the triggers back. It's tough to keep the second copy of this card. I would consider it, but it's difficult to use efficiently. I'm not sure. I would probably put it back. Knowing me, I would be digging for Sea Rumble Brave Shooter. Yeah, this hand is very good. This is a decent hand. Next up. This hand is decent. Probably keep the Rust or Impact Dragon. Rhythm of Joy's neat. Because these two kind of softcore combo together. I would probably keep this hand, not because it's good, but because it's fine, and I could totally see it getting much worse if I put cards back. It gives you an extra opportunity to draw your over trigger when you put cards back when you don't need to. It's happened many a time where, I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, but playing around your over trigger better than your opponent will make you win more games on average than they do. So just by eliminating opportunities for things to go wrong, you can increase your win rate. This lets us have a nice play on our second turn. Yeah, we have shield. We have board to build with and fight with. It's not a bad hand. I would be upset about drawing 2 heal triggers in an event, but that's just me. I guess everybody would be. I guess the thing I would take away from that is you'd have to play kind of slow with this information. Having that information would help you structure how you do your spacing for the whole game, how much damage you do and don't take, what damage counts you do and don't want to sit at. Having knowledge about that you are less likely to heal than your opponent might make you more likely to play around, more or less likely to play around turning off their heal triggers. I'm just very mindful of those sorts of things in general. For this hand, I used to have a philosophy that you have to cradle Vivace like a sweet summer precious child, but I don't feel that way anymore. With this card to search it and the amount of draw power we have with the energy cyclers and stuff, I just don't keep her very often anymore. And look, that's why we just didn't need to. That's a good hand. We have shield, we have aggression, we have everything. This hand is not great. We would put back those for sure. And I might keep. Knowing me, I would put this card back. Not because it's not good, but because if I'm putting that back this many cards, I'm just kind of like fishing for like cards like that. Like yes, it doesn't. Like there were reasons to hold on to it. There were reasons not to. I feel like you're punished less often than you aren't. I know that thing I said about the over trigger, but that extra card could be lots of things, and it gives my hand more opportunities to combo, because that card doesn't do much by itself. So if I'm going to be putting cards back, I might as well put back a lot to try and make good use of Luster Impact Dragon, and to be more likely to find a card like Sea Rumble Brave Shooter. Because drawing your over trigger is not the end of the world. It's not. Sometimes it's not even always a bad thing. There's games I've won because I've drawn it. And there it is. We only have 3 cards left in our deck, so we can't do it. But with this exercise, we found that when we went first, we did not produce a bad hand. After looking at all of our deck, not like every possible combination of cards that could ever exist, but we never found a combination of cards that was bad. We mostly just ended up redrawing triggers and stuff. Triggers, PGs, and it helps you see what you do as a player. Like, I can see just from this right here that I don't hold on to my PGs. Like, I mean, I did once, but in general, I don't. And then now for going second, because this changes the way we think about how we're going to be structuring our games. If we're going second, we're going to want to hold on to more energy cards. Like before, if we had drawn multiple energy cards, we might consider putting back an Alvina, since we don't necessarily need Alvina the same way. But now, I'd be more likely to keep 2 Energy Blast cards in my deck, or in my hand. And since you draw 2 more cards going second than first, so I'm going to put back the Vivaces even more. But I am currently, in my mind, less likely to put back a perfect guard. Since I'm going second, there could be easily, oh boy, this was on top. There's reasons to keep these PGs, like right here. I know I was just saying that, but I don't have. I would put it back this time. Why would I put it back this time, you may ask? Because I want to put back 3 cards. Because I had drawn 2 triggers, so I didn't feel very likely, or if I had drawn like 1 or 2 cards, that I would have trigger. Because like, yes, this PG is shield. Yes, these are trigger, but you don't want to be wasting these early, and this isn't enough to solo block a Vanguard. So I like to have a crit or a heal in my hand to slow down game, especially going second. If my opponent is really, like, I don't know, if I'm playing against like Leverage, some decks just kind of like their turn 2 is just ride swing pass, and I'm about to get pressured a lot. It's really nice to be able to block. I'm like, yeah, I know I won't be able to use this broccoli, so maybe I should have put back the broccoli too. Yeah, I should have put back the broccoli. Pretend I put back broccoli, because I'm trying to stay low in this particular instance. I'm not trying to make effective use of this counterblast. I'm trying to stay low on damage count. It's different. This hand is not great, but it's not bad. We have the Vivace in. We don't have a searcher, but we have her already. And we have a little play. We pitch, we call, we can start beating down, and we have shield. So that goes in the good hand pile. It's not good, but I had the passable hand pile, really, and then the bad hand pile. This hand, this is one of those hands, again, where it's like, this is not a good hand, but if I can just see it getting worse. You know, like we put back some of these cards looking for something better. Like we put back these two and we like just like draw like a Vivace and like, I don't know, another Alvina. It was just, ugh. Like there's ways that that hand could get much worse, and that hand is totally passable. There's nothing wrong with that hand, so I'd keep it. There's another thing to keep in mind when you're doing redraws. It's not like, how can your hand get worse? How can your redraw lose you the game? Like this hand, this is another pretty keepable hand. I have early plays. We can pitch this twin cast early, since it'll scale in value in our drop zone. We have a Searcher to Vivace. Like this hand is fine. I'd probably keep that hand. A less experienced player might try and put back that heal trigger. But if you put back this heal trigger because you're so desperate and tunnel on checking it, if you draw Vivace off the top of your deck, you suddenly have no easy blocks, and you can get caught with your pants down. You can get pushed higher in damage than you'd like to be. It's like, yeah, twin cast blocks, but not for enough. Yeah, this blocks, but not for enough. So that's my thoughts on that hand. This hand is Dees. This hand is Dees. There are universes, like, yeah, we're going second. So I might actually just put back the broccoli. If I similar to how that's this first hand, if you are able to scout your opponent, like if they're not very careful with the way they're shuffling their cards and you can see what deck they're playing, you might get a better understanding of whether or not you should hold on to this broccoli, because maybe they're gonna boost your strats and this isn't gonna be enough to block you, and you might as well like put back some cards. But this is another hand where it could totally be worse. It's fine. Like you ride up, you pitch this to ride up, you draw 2 cards, you have a broccoli to help you make a nice board. You can have a 15k and a 20k lane turn 2. You have enough defense. Yeah, like this hand is fine. If I had more information on my opponent's deck, it might change how I redraw that hand. But in this abstract universe, I could just see that hand getting worse. This one's tricky. Putting back 2 cards. I'm not as likely as I'd like to be to have a trigger in my hand. So as much as this card is neat, I would probably try and put it back into my deck so that I'm more likely to draw a trigger card and have shield in my hand. So I found one anyway. But the thought process was there, because if I didn't put it back, then that's what, 5. Wait, I would have seen 7 cards. Triggers are 1 and 3. So I would see about 2 triggers, and I had seen 2 triggers. But with the new cards in your deck are different, so you don't want to let Gambler's Fallacy affect how you do your redraws too much, but it does affect the odds a little bit. So if I put back 2 cards, I'm not like as likely to have that trigger in my hand as I'd like to be. So this lets us, like, now we can be a little more reckless with our Rosarium Fairy. We have our endgame set up. We have a Cycler to have a nice open egg. That's a fine hand. Next. Hand's decent. Now this is another one of those hands where I would probably keep it because I could see it getting worse. I could also see me putting these 3 back, looking for, like, getting greedy, looking for a Cycler. That does so sound like me. I would so do that. That's something I would do. I don't know if this is something one should do, but it's what I would do. And I'm not like punished for it. We still have shield. We don't really have too much plays though, which is unfortunate. What did I put back? Rhythm of Joy. Yeah, this is getting punished for putting back the Rhythm of Joy. Because if we had Alvina plus Rhythm of Joy, we'd have a good hand here. It's not like this hand is bad per se. We're going second, so we get to draw for turn and to draw for our starter. And we have many great ones. With this one, I'd probably put back, like, this is one of those hands that gets worse if you change it, because we have stuff to do with our energy early. We have a follow-up play after we draw like 4 cards. We'll find a great one. We have shield. We have many things to do. Hand is fine. And we have 5 cards left, so we can see what we have left in our deck. This would have been another pretty meaty. Like, we would have put back some of these cards, but if you were forced to keep those cards, you wouldn't be upset about it. So as you can see, again, the deck doesn't produce bad hands. We just don't have any. It's so neat. We ended up putting back very few cards even this time, just like triggers and a few pieces that were awkward in our particular hands. We shouldn't have even... putting back that one was a mistake. But that pretty much covers everything. We went over why we're playing all the cards we were playing. We went over how to play it. We went over how to draw it. We went over how to change it. That pretty much wraps it up. So I hope you guys have enjoyed my first ever YouTube video. Yay. It was a lot of fun to make, and I hope you guys get something out of it. I've wanted for a long time to like have a place to share my knowledge, because I know a lot about this game and a lot of people don't. There isn't very many good places online to learn about it, so hopefully this place can be a nice place to learn about decks. If there's any decks that you'd like me to cover, leave a comment, subscribe for more so that you can see that video coming out, because I'm going to probably make some more and talk about decks like Grand Blue and Mythiarch. I could show off my Petrolka deck. That deck's always really fun. But that's it from me. I've been Mimi from Cardfight Crash Course. Take care. Bye.